This video was made possible by my patrons, Joshua Bartlett, Scorch88, Drew Cavallo, Thomas Frost, James Schubach, Gomicide, Victor Cage, Douglas Smith, Capitalism is Good, Pipsqueak, Michael, Lady Cthulhu, and Snizzy Poo. Thank you so much to all of you. Today's video was selected on the basis of a Twitter poll. Check my Twitter profile every Sunday to vote for Tuesday's video on My 2 Cents. Hello everyone, this is My 2 Cents, and today we're going to talk about how supply and demand works in a free market. This is a subject that is very simple to understand. However, it is one that is often forgotten in public policy discussions. I think that if more people stopped and thought about how supply and demand works, they'd realize that many of the problems that the government attempts to solve would disappear if they were simply privatized and left to the free market. Let's start by addressing a very common claim amongst progressives. Business owners are greedy. They raise their prices as high as they possibly can and deliberately lower their own employees' wages, all so they can increase their already vast wealth. Our only hope is for the government to step in with minimum wage laws and price controls so that the average working family can be guaranteed the things they need. Makes sense, right? I mean, we've all had those moments where we visit a store or a restaurant and we stand back appalled by the price tags. How could they possibly expect anyone to buy the product for that price? It's not worth that much. However, think about how many times you have said, "That's too expensive," but then bought the product anyways. Well, if you did, you just communicated to the seller that it actually was worth that much. If you didn't think it was, you wouldn't have bought it. Of course, you would have preferred that it cost less. No one deliberately chooses to pay more if given the option. But if you bought it, it means that either consciously or subconsciously, you performed an economic calculation in your mind and determined that the benefits of purchasing the product were greater than not purchasing the product and keeping your money. Hence, by buying the product, you communicated to the seller that it was indeed worth that much, at least to you. We make economic calculations like this numerous times every day, usually without giving it much thought, but we make the calculations nonetheless. $5 spent on coffee and a muffin is $5 that could have been spent on a newspaper, or put towards your grocery shopping later. The price of every good or service is ultimately subject to supply and demand. This is a graph commonly used to represent the supply and demand curves. The law of demand states that if the supply of a good or service remains constant, but more people want that good or service, the price will rise. As the price rises, fewer people will be inclined to purchase the product, and so only those that want it the most will buy. By extension, however, the law of supply states that as suppliers see the price of a good or service rising, they will seek to increase the supply of that good or service in order to increase their revenue. Since supply and demand fluctuate very rapidly based on an innumerable amount of factors, the market will constantly seek equilibrium, where the supply matches the demand via the appropriate price, so long as suppliers seek to meet the demands of the consumers by responding to price increases and price decreases. No one person could possibly know or understand all the factors that play into people's decisions whether to buy or sell, but in a free market they don't have to. So long as businesses and consumers alike pay attention to price levels, the free market will ensure that those goods and services that are in the highest demand continue to get supplied at lower prices as the supply levels increase. Now, consider this question. Can business owners simply set prices at any price they want? As an example, consider a chocolate bar. What does the average chocolate bar cost these days? $1? $2? Maybe a little bit more? What if a manufacturer said, "Ha! If I sell my chocolate bars for $1,000 each, I'll be rich! Wahahaha!" No he wouldn't. Why? Because no one loves chocolate so much that they'd be willing to pay $1,000 for a bar. He'd make zero profit, and further, if there was a competitor selling similar bars for $1 or $2 each, all his customers would simply start buying from the competitor. Thus, no matter how greedy the manufacturer may be, he is subject to the demand of the consumers. Chocolate is simply not in high enough demand that anyone could get away with selling chocolate bars for more than a few dollars at most. This is a simple illustration of demand. If all other factors remain equal, the higher the price of a good, the less people will demand that good. People want chocolate bars bad enough that businesses like Hershey keep making them. However, demand only goes so far. If chocolate becomes more and more expensive, eventually it will reach a point where people will forego buying it altogether. Conversely, at bare minimum, the bar must be sold for more than it costs to produce, or else there is no profit to be made. It is therefore on the business to predict as best as they can how many bars should be produced and sold at what price to produce the most profits. Neither the business nor the consumer has all the power. It's dependent both on how much the consumers want chocolate bars and how costly chocolate bars are to produce. Of course, the progressive may object that this example is irrelevant, since chocolate is not a necessity of life. What about services that really are necessary, such as healthcare services? It's one thing to talk about supply and demand with regards to chocolate, but people will die if they don't receive critical operations or treatments. Therefore, greedy doctors and medical providers can arbitrarily raise prices, knowing that if their patients don't pay the fees, regardless of how ridiculous, they'll die. Well, actually, supply and demand turns out to be a benefit for the healthcare industry as well. For example, suppose that heart disease and heart disorders are becoming more prevalent in a city where there's only one surgeon who is qualified to provide open heart surgery. If there are numerous patients who require open heart surgery, there is a high demand, but a low supply of qualified surgeons. Therefore, the price of such surgery will rise to compensate for the increased demand. Exactly, the progressive shouts, and only the rich will receive treatment. That's not fair. Well, initially perhaps, but think about what your other options would be. If the government instituted price controls dictating that the doctor could only charge a certain amount for his services, it would simply be first come, first serve, and many would still go untreated. If there was a lottery to decide who got surgery first, it might be considered more fair in the eyes of some, but the reality is that many would still go untreated. The problem is not that there is a high price for surgeries. The high price is merely a symptom of the real problem, which is a shortage of qualified surgeons. What then can correct this shortage? Well, in a free market, other medical professionals would see this increased demand as an opportunity. Aspiring medical students may choose to become cardiologists or heart surgeons in lieu of other specific medical professions. And surgeons in other cities may move to the area since they see that there is money to be made from the high demand of patients needing heart surgery. As the supply of surgeons increases due to profit incentive, the price of heart surgery will go down. Further, other medical professionals may be inclined to do research into what is causing the spike in heart disease, or finding a more cost-effective, less intrusive way of treating the problem, since people are undoubtedly willing to pay for a cheaper alternative. All this because of one thing. The desire to earn profits will always encourage professionals of any industry to provide more, higher quality, cheaper services as they see demand for those services rising through increased prices. However, when the government attempts to fix the problem of high healthcare costs by lowering the prices through force, the profit incentive is lost. Those medical students who would have sought to enter the field because of the profit incentive that would have been communicated through the higher prices may now choose to pursue different career fields where they do see the potential to make profit. Essentially, healthcare professionals will not seek to increase the supply since it will not produce the returns that it otherwise would have had the government not artificially lowered the price. Further, it is very easy for businesses of all kinds to raise and lower their prices in their individual workplaces as they see demand going up and down. But government-set prices only change after years of political debate, virtually ensuring that government prices will always be too high or too low depending on what industry or service is in question. That means there will be an overabundance of services available where the government has set the price too high, and a shortage of services where the government has set the price too low. So remember, when the market is left to its own devices, supply and demand ensure that profits can only be achieved by providing the highest quality goods that people want and need at prices lower than they are currently available. Anytime the government tries to artificially control this process, it will inevitably lead to shortages in one place, surpluses in another, and lower quality goods and services overall. And that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and subscribe. You can also hit the bell to ensure you're notified every time I upload a new video. This video was made possible by my patrons. If anyone else would like to donate and help ensure that I have the time and resources to keep putting out content, for just $1 a month on Patreon or Maker Support, you'll receive your name listed in the end credits and the link to one of your social media platforms listed in the description. You can also support the channel by purchasing my 2 cents merchandise or checking out my Amazon affiliate links. To follow me on Twitter, Minds.com, BitChute, WordPress, Gab, or iTunes, check out the links in the description. Uploads are every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, so stay tuned for more videos.